Good morning. Starting the Finance Committee meeting, members Alderwoman Finlayson, Alderman Payon are present. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We have some amendments. Let's see if I'm even looking at the right one. To add SA 3321. And add the office of mayor to the deliberations part of the agenda, or actually legislative and then deliberations.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we amend the agenda to include SA 33 and the mayor's office.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Next item on the agenda is approval from the minutes from last night.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is SA 3321. Ms. Connolly, can you walk us through that?
Yes, sir. So the fire department held a CPR training course for the Pentagon Sailing Club, and this is just reimbursement from them to cover costs of that class. $650.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion? Is there a motion to recommend approval of SA 3321 to the City Council?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. SA 3121 is recommended for approval by the Finance Committee to the City Council. Now, if I can make this go away.
Do we have a copy of that somewhere?
It's in our email.
Oh.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a revisit of Parks and Recs. I think primarily this was to go over the financials with salaries and expenses included in them. I'm looking for that.
Did Ms. Green give us an updated hard copy?
I thought she did, but this is dated April 22nd, 2021.
I didn't give you an updated, well, actually, I printed yours in the council chambers last night. The one that I sent you this morning is the updated copy, and it's also attached to their ID number. So if you have the electronic version of the agenda up, it's the second attachment. It says updated.
Okay, and that is dated the 29th. All right. So, let me ask the committee, this is updated in the financial section, I believe, to show salaries and benefits along with the other expenditures, and that starts about page 10 of the page 11 of the presentation. Were there questions from the committee? Do we need to ask anything of Director Trader?
Just a minute, let me.
While you're thinking, I do have a question for Director Trader, and that has to do with aligning the staffing summary to match the expenditure categories. The staffing summary looks like it's more or less listed by where people sit, but the categories are broken down into Pip Moyer and front desk, which seems like it's part of Pip Moyer. So I'm not sure exactly why that's separate. And then recreations and park, and then administration, which I just have a very hard time crosswalking between the financial categories and the staffing categories. And I had asked for a rework of the staffing table to be organized in the same way as the financial tables are. Is that something that is available?
I believe we already provided that to you. Katie, did we not? It had the FTEs on it as well, and we broke it down by Rec and Parks Division.
Okay, I don't recall seeing that. That was an email, I assume.
Yeah, it was an email, and it was attached to the email, and it went to you and Alderman Savage because both of you had asked for information of that nature. And it had columns with FTEs and total FTEs, and we had it by division.
Okay, that has escaped my awareness, but it really does need to go to, well, all of the council, but certainly the other members of the Finance Committee.
I think you guys got a hard copy at the first in-person meeting of it. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
Okay.
And this is different from page 10?
It just breaks down the Rec and Parks groups by the division, so you can match them up to those financial tables in the back.
Yeah, so there should be one. I don't quite understand the financial divisions either. There's Pip Moyer, but then there's front desk.
I believe that this year we have consolidated front desk into Pip Moyer, right, Katie? Yeah, we didn't see any need for that front desk category anymore either. So in the FY22 budget, we consolidated front desk in with Pip Moyer.
So
And then-
is page,
Go-
I'm sorry, is page 11 the consolidated? No, it can't be. So is there a sheet that lists all of the programs within Pip Moyer? Is there a summary of, because what I'm seeing is it's still broken down by activity. Front desk, parts, admin, latchkey.
know where you are.
We're looking at the PowerPoint, the updated PowerPoint presentation dated,
The 11th page is aquatics.
not the most recent one, the one dated April 29th. Look at the front page of your thing. Does it say April 29th, 2021?
April 22nd.
Yeah, so you don't have the most current one.
Okay, why don't I have the most current one?
I asked you first.
I have no idea. Obviously, I didn't get it. I don't know where. We have a hard copy of that?
Yeah, there was one on our cubicles last night.
Not on mine. I was in there twice. There wasn't anything new on mine.
This shouldn't be that hard, this hard. It should be fairly straightforward to get staffing aligned with accounting categories and have a current presentation that has those matched up.
So I just sent one. It's the position summary for FY 2021 with FTE data. Is that the one? Actually, no. Sorry. That's from last year.
I'll
Yeah.
try to
Disregard
I'll
that
try to
one.
find it. I'm going to try to find it and resend it.
Well, the problem is there's nothing I can do with it because I'm in my computer on Zoom. I guess I can minimize and try to open up the email. I guess my preference, committee, with your permission, is to defer this till tomorrow when we can get organized, everybody looking at the same thing and up to date.
All right. I do have something from Takia this morning, but it looks like what I already have. Maybe not. Okay, I got something at 9:15 this morning.
That should be, the front page should be dated April 29th.
Yep, got it.
Okay. But that still doesn't have this still has the front desk separate from Pip Moyer. So I guess, I don't think there's anything that is mystifying here. It's just that it's very hard to try to coordinate between people and functions. So I guess my preference would be to go back and give it one more try to get all of these different pieces coordinated with each other. I'm seeking input from committee members. Sheila, you're on mute.
Thank you. I don't want us to hold Mr. Trader hostage either. So if we're not going to be talking about his department, then.
Right. And I'm sorry for the use of the word hostage. We didn't want to keep him away from other matters. So let's.
Or anyone else for that matter. But.
Mr. Gerald, Mr. City Manager, can you help us get this all coalesced into one updated and collated?
I think Director Dickinson and I just need to understand what you're looking for. Well, I'm not sure that I do, and maybe she does, but.
So I right now I'm trying to find the PowerPoint that we finished up for Rec and Parks. And so I gotta look for that. And that's gonna take a minute. Katie, can you send that to me right now so it's in the top of my email?
Yes.
Okay. I just sent to Kia that FTE schedule, and Alderman Arnett, it may be a little deceiving because it starts by breaking down salaries into the components for each division. And then it has total pension column for each division. And then out to the right, we put the FTEs for each division. So it was serving a dual purpose. And the FTEs are broken down out to the right. And we gave that to you so you could do your division of the total salaries by the FTEs.
So if you go to the budget binder itself, page 106, and then the succeeding pages 107, 108, 109, 106 has FTEs, but not in the same order of organization as the financial categories. And then the financial categories, as we just discussed a minute ago, Pip Moyer Rec Center front desk budget summary, is that not part of Pip Moyer Rec Center front desk?
So
That used to be a separate budget item, but now for this fiscal year, for FY22, we've combined them. So if you look at page 12 on the right-hand side, you can see all zeros because we pulled that into Pip Moyer Rec Center. We agree exactly with what you're saying, that it is part of Pip Moyer Rec Center. So now it's all combined.
And then there's an overarching administrative budget summary, which I would assume is Director Trader and whomever, and I don't really know who that is.
There's three in that division. There's Director Trader. They have a contractual employee, Miss Cross. She's in there, and it may be Pam. I'm trying to think of who the third person is.
Okay, so it's hard for me to understand exactly the organization. It would seem to me there's a box at the top that's administration. And then under that, there would be a box that's Pip Moyer. There might be a box that is parks. There might be a box that's latchkey, Stanton Center, sports budget summary, which seems to be separate, camps and classes, health and fitness, pool, and then harbor master, and then art and public places. So if I were doing the organization chart, it would be administration at the top and then several of these boxes below. If I'm getting that right. But like, for example, sports and budget, is that that's part of Recs, right? Not part of parks?
It's part of recreation and programming.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get an understanding of the organization and the number of peoples and the number of dollars that go with a consistent set of boxes. I don't think there's anything, I mean, to me, it should be straightforward, but it's very hard to look at across categories and understand the organization. And let's see, when we go back.
Mr. Chair, may I interrupt for a moment?
Certainly.
You're looking at an org chart that's different from the one that's in my book if yours has the pool on it, because mine does not have the pool listed.
Well, that's another thing. So when you go to the very front page, the organizational chart, the chart that's here does not match the budget categories. So I would say if I'm looking at this front page, page 104 in the budget book, under Parks and Recs, I would see 3 full-time or 3 people, director, trader, and whomever the other 2 are. And then we have a division that is recreation. And then I would think parks and then Stanton Center, but the pool is not on this organizational structure, but I think it should be separate because it's a new entity, but the organizational structure should match the financial structure.
Well, may I ask Mr. Trader if the pool is within one of those categories that are listed?
Facilities.
Is that under,
It should be under aquatics.
there is no aquatics category. So is it recreation programs? Pip Moyer recreation? I don't know.
Facilities, I would have thought.
Well, there's no facilities either.
There's parks and
Oh,
facilities.
parks and facilities, yeah.
Right.
No, it's not under parks and facilities. It's recreational programming would be the category that it should be under.
Okay. That makes sense. So it would be right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes. There would actually be 8 boxes. One of them would be aquatic programming.
Yeah, we have fitness and aquatics category. Fitness and
Aquatics.
aquatic.
So how does fitness differ from what goes on in Pip Moyer?
Well, fitness is what goes on in Pip Moyer. They consist of exercise classes, purchasing of fitness equipment, the fitness weight room, and the cardiovascular room. All that comes under fitness.
Well, I don't know what you sent us, Director Dickinson, but I suspect that it still doesn't match the organizational chart does not match the staffing chart, does not match the financial categories.
So I think the org chart is organized slightly differently, a little more higher level based on functions. And the orgs, I can't tell you how those were originally divided because I wasn't here when they were, but they're more of a, like you said, where you sit kind of thing. That's the way the orgs within our Munis system are organized. And this is more of a functional org chart. So you could match them up. There's not that many that are grouped here. Like I'm sure the recreational programs includes the pool. Camps and classes would probably also be in recreation programs.
Correct.
That's another org they have. So we had an attempt to match to this org chart because I think it's attempting to be more programmatic in nature and not the way the Munis system is tracking transactions.
So would it be possible to add those subcategories under recreation programs
In the org chart.
in the org chart?
Okay. For now, you want us to replace this page for you, or for next year?
Well, I'd still like to match the people in the dollars and to look at dollars over time. Pool is relatively, well, it's not new. It's just there's a new pool. But it's really hard to figure out exactly. For me, there's the city manager, there's recreation and parks. And under that, there's parks, there's recreation, there's harbor master, and there's art and public places. And then under recreation, there are some subsets. And under parks, there may or may not be subsets.
I'm not sure there are any under parks. I think that's just parks.
And then is Stanton Center analogous to Pip Moyer?
No, Stanton Center is its own.
Okay.
It's in our list of Munis orgs. It's called Stanton Center.
But it's
Latchkey-
under recreation.
No, it's, if you look at this org chart that you're referring to, Stanton Center is listed separately. And it's a separate Munis cost
But
center.
but it's not parks and it's not harbor master and it's not art and public places.
Right?
Is it under recreation?
It is supervised by Catherine Owings, who is the recreational program division chief. The programs that are facilitated at the Stanton Community Center are under recreation and parks. The facility aspect of the Stanton Community Center is under the division chief, Rodney Dillard, who is the division chief of parks and facilities.
How do we define what goes on at the Stanton Center?
We define programming as that goes on at the Stanton Center under recreation program. It's in that division.
So for example, is Latchkey at the Stanton Center? Is that one of the programs that's there?
No, Latchkey is not at the Stanton Center. Latchkey is located at the school, in the school system, at the elementary school locations.
So give me an example of what goes on there so I can kind of put this in the right pocket for me.
At the Stanton Community Center, Boy Scouts, after school programs, basketball leagues, other before and after school programs. We have
so that's very different.
Pardon me?
That's very different from the types of programs that go on at Pip Moyer.
That has been traditional. I mean, the needs are different. Yeah. You know, the communities are different, so the needs would be different.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand why it's separate. So
it has always been that way, since I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the reasons, perhaps, I'm throwing this out there, is that the Stanton Community Center is a non-revenue based facility. And what I mean by that is that we do provide a lot of free programming there.
So there's no membership necessary or anything like that?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, I think if you review the document that Jody sent you, it'll help bridge the gap between the personnel in each division and the costs associated with them, at least in the meantime.
Okay, I guess though, I will do that, but I'm not going to do it on the fly right now. But I guess it would be good to have the organizational chart reflect the staffing chart to reflect the financial charts. I mean, they really should all be the same construction.
So how
Matt?
about we redo that org chart and get it back to you and show you what components are in each box?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm trying to sort out. So I get Stanton Center is different than Pip Moyer, always has been. I understand that. And then we have other facilities like the pool is not Stanton Center and it's not Pip Moyer, and the parks are not facilities, they're parks and things like that. But I'm just trying to get a sense of the organization and then the people that go with each of those organizational structures, and then the dollars and other expenses that go with those same organizational structures. And I, whatever they are, that's what they are. Whatever you need them to be, Director Trader, that's what they need to be. I'm just trying to be able to go from one clump to the next clump to the next clump in a consistent fashion.
Okay, so are you asking for three separate charts or one combined chart with all those components, with three components?
In the budget binder itself, starting on page 104, I would like the organizational chart on page 104 to reflect an organization of staffing on page 106, and the staffing to reflect whatever the financial categories are. I hear now that front desk is now subsumed under Pip Moyer. That makes sense to me. I don't know why. When I see what you're saying, Director Jail, it's zero now. So part of the reason is we have to be able to track it back. Parks seems to me to be a big standalone organization. I was asked this morning by someone what all Parks does, and I guess I don't have a clear answer. I know they have a lot of trucks that do things like mowing and pruning and keeping the field ship shape. I don't know what else Parks does, but and then administration would be in the top box, which is called Recreation and Parks, I assume. And then I would assume that Parks has a subdirector, but is there a subdirector for all of Recreation? And then we know that there's a subdirector for Harbor Master. And then we have another independent function, which is Art in Public Places, which I'm trying to remember why Art in Public Places is in Parks and Recs. Is that just a place for it to be? Like Harbor Master is just there for a place for it to be?
My understanding is that the director of Parks and Rec has always been the staff liaison with the Art in Public Places. So it doesn't really report, like the other boxes that are shown in the org chart, they don't really report to them, but the director staffs that commission or council, whatever they go by, commission, I guess.
Right.
And we oversee their procurement processes.
I think it's because they're the most closely aligned department to what they do at AIPPC. It's more on the recreational program side of things and not something like Public Works would handle. Yes, they do all the staffing, for instance, enter all their payment information into Munis when they need to get a bill paid.
So then there's another crosswalk that I like to do, which is to go back to page 36 of the budget binder, which looks at the total FTEs. And that's where, when I look at, if I can find it, Parks and Recs. Yeah, so in these tables on page 106, we see 33 FTEs, but when you go back to page 36 for Parks and Recs, you see 79. And that's a big jump. And so I've always wanted to try to figure out how do we go from 33, I guess, regular employees to 79, which includes part-time and seasonal? And where do the costs for all of those additional employees, 46 additional employees, where do they show up? Under what boxes? Because that's a big jump in the number of employees. In fact, it makes Parks and Recs in terms of total FTEs the third biggest program in the city after police and fire.
So we
Remember,
don't.
Public Works has a lot of non-general fund employees, so that
Yeah, I know, it's actually 100.
Public Works has over 100 people.
Yeah, it's
altogether.
110 or 111. But
So
still,
depending on what you're looking at, the FTEs for temporary employees are not in the tables in the budget book. We put notations next to the table saying this department has X number of temporary employees. And I think under Rec and Parks, they have several. I mean, and so I don't know if that's where you're getting the extra people. There's a lot of temps, a lot of FTEs that are temporary seasonal.
so to be honest, I don't know where I'm getting the extra people. I just try to compare the table on page 36 with the tables for each of the departments as we go through department by department.
Okay,
And when I
so
look
there's
at Parks and Recs, I see 33
33.
employees. And when I look at the table on 36, I see 79. That's a
Because you
significant-
wanted FTEs in that front table and we added the temporaries in there. So
Correct.
if you look at, let me find out, what page is that front table on?
36.
Okay, hold on. So let's keep that 33 in mind. Hold on. Just give me a minute. Okay, so if you look at the table on page 36
Right?
and you see Rec and Parks,
Yep.
you'll see 25 full-time employees and 8 part-time employees. That adds to 33.
That's 33 full-time employees.
No, it's not full. See, in the table in the back, we're not calling them part-time or full-time.
realize that.
Yeah, so here we're showing you the 25 and the 8 that equal to 33. And then we count them by FTEs. We take their part-time people that are there, the 8. We create an FTE of 4.5. And then we take all their temp FTEs, 49.5, and add it to the 79 to get 79 FTEs.
So my sense is we have apples and oranges and pears here, but on the table on page 36, my sense is the actual full-time equivalence that is analogous to the table on 106 would be 25 plus 4.5.
No,
Because the 4.5 is the 8
Okay, 106 has positions, the number of positions for non-temp seasonal employees.
Okay.
So some of those positions are part-time. And we used to have this front table, we only had positions in it, but you wanted us to add a calculation to show FTEs. So we took that position data and converted it into a table to show you what it means from an FTE perspective.
But from an analytic perspective, can you see my dilemma when I look at page 36, which I don't think is truly full-time equivalent numbers, and then I look at page 106, and I see a big difference in number of employees, and I'm wondering for those other, whatever the number is, 79 minus 25 minus 8.
49.5.
Right. Where are they being paid and what are they doing?
We do pay them through the regular payroll system, but they change a lot. And right now, if you were to look in the system, there are many vacant spots. At least half of them will be vacant because they don't fill them until the summer. So instead of trying to list, we have this many temporary positions, they may hire, for instance, I'm going to give an example. To do programs, they may have 10 people working half-time and 2 people working full-time. And So that's, in the next season, they may do 6 people working full-time and 2 people working part-time, depending on their needs and their programs. So that changes, and we are trying to convert their total financial pool for temporary seasonal workers into equivalent full-time positions. So we can't say there's X number of positions, because they may hire 50, they may hire 30, and pay and make the 30 work more hours than the 50, or the 50 work less hours. It's all very flexible and always changing.
So again, if you go back to the front of the book and you look at total spending by department, I can't remember what page that's on, but there is a page, it's page 25, and you look at Parks and Recs and you see all of that detail. If I add all of that up, so you've got Pip Moyer facility, once again, this is arrayed the same way as the FTEs rather than by, well, maybe it is by functions. I don't know, I can't tell. But anyway, when I add all of that up, I come up to some number. So 779,600, 1,295,100, 641,900. Add all that up. Does that include all the money paid for part-time seasonal employees?
Yes. So within, if you will find that those categories there on page 25 are the same categories you see in your position, the front position, let me think. The front position schedule is by total. What's in the back is by program. That's confusing. If you look at what we gave you this morning, and I had Takia send you this morning, that position, I've got them grouped, all the FTEs grouped by the same categories that you see here on page 25. Because you wanted to use that financial information and you wanted to divide the total salary information by the FTEs to get an average pay. And so those, what we sent you this morning, that table gets you there. It takes total salary and benefits and FTEs, and then you can do the division on your own as far as which averages you want to look at.
So, and I would note on page 25, pool is a category, but it's not in the structural, the organizational chart on page 104. And all I'm trying to do is to get a consistent crosswalk from the most aggregate to the most disaggregate, be able to understand what's going on. And it is not really possible with the way the information is presented in the budget binder. So, and this is what I asked and apparently did not make clear. I hope now you're understanding my problem of trying to walk from the most aggregate in the beginning of the budget binder, pages 25 and 36, to the disaggregate in the section for Parks and Recs, and see similar organizational structures and then matchups between employees and dollars. And
so I gave you you have the employees and the dollars.
Okay.
You have that in that thing we sent this morning.
All right. I will look at that and see if I can understand it. I'm not going to look at it now, but this is, to be direct, this is exactly the same problem I had last year and asked exactly these same questions last year. And it still isn't straight, or at least a logical progression for me. Maybe it's only me, in which case I'll go away and sulk in the corner. But I really am trying to look for some consistency across all parts of the budget binder and all sections of the presentation for Parks and Recs, starting with the organizational chart, going through the staffing, and going through the dollars. And I'm not able to comprehend it at this point. I'll see what you sent me this morning. And by the way, and Director Trader, for your benefit, all I'm trying to do is understand the organization. I'm not in any way critiquing what the numbers say or how the operation is going. I'm just trying to figure it out from an accounting point of view, so I can do my job as part of the finance committee in understanding what's going on in each and every one of the departments. And I can do that for most departments. This one has been tougher for me to understand. So it is a matter of trying to understand what's going on, not a matter of being critical about what's going on.
I understand. Would you need an employee organizational chart? Would that help you?
I don't know, to be honest. I get the difference between employees, which I think is what's on page 36, and positions, which I'm beginning to understand, I think, is on page 106. Is that correct, Director Dickinson?
First of all, you'll have to repeat that again. I'm trying to think of what we might create. I popped on to offer to try to pull this stuff together. It's just that whatever I pull together, I'm afraid it's not going to be exactly what you want. So I'm,
Yeah, well,
I'm thinking about that. So what was your question?
Well, on page 36, those are employees. On page 106, those are
Positions.
filled positions?
No, all positions.
All positions.
Think of them as pins, you know, that term, position identification numbers. Think of them as individual places in the system where we can hire somebody. But we don't put the temps in there because there are far more temporary positions in the system than they'd ever have the money to hire.
But you do put 8 part-time people in on page 106.
Yes, when they are employees.
When
and
they're
they are
employees,
part-time.
but they're
in
counted
there
here as a total employee. So in
Yes,
other
because
words,
they are an employee.
Yeah, this number should really be, if you were counting it as full-time equivalents, it should not be 33. It should be 29.5.
The point of the table is not to give you
I
full-time
understand.
equivalents. It's to give you the number of positions we're authorizing.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sorry to drag the rest of the committee through if it's not, it is something that I've been trying to understand for a while now, and I guess I would like time to look at what was sent this morning to see if I can make sense of what is going on across organization, employees, and spending.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jody.
I was just going to say, we'll try to come up with something that kind of pulls it all together.
Well, you may have. I just haven't had a
Okay.
chance to look at what you sent.
All right,
this morning.
but you're right. I mean, the org chart doesn't have it in the same grouping, so you can't see how all those positions feed into that org chart. I understand that part, so I'm trying to visualize something we could pull together for you.
Yeah. Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yeah, thank you. So if I were to cross-reference, and I'm looking at the presentation, the newest updated presentation, and on pages 11, 12, 13, all the pages that refer to Pitt Moyer Recreation Center, I could crosswalk that information if I added them all up to what's on the chart that you sent for salaries, overturns, benefits with FTDs, the one you just sent. Is that correct?
Jody,
Yeah.
you're on mute.
I'm opening that PowerPoint right now. Can you go through that again? You said on
Yeah, the PowerPoint has a slide for Pitt Moyer budget summary, and then one for, the next one is for front desk, the very same topics we were talking about, subdivisions, parks budget, admin, latchkey, then it goes to the stand center. So just looking at Pitt Moyer.
Okay.
If I were to add up these sheets, I should come up with what's on this? No.
So this is exactly what's in your budget book. This table on that slide is exactly what's in your budget book for that division.
And you should be able to match the total salary costs of 552,400. That's your total salary cost in the budget chart as well in the PowerPoint.
But for previous years in this Pip Moyer, we would have to add the numbers from the front desk into that. So if we were doing a comparison over time, just take salaries and benefits for 2020, that should be 251,435 plus 222,974.
You would have to add the two. You're correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those two first tables in the presentation added together.
So just as someone who's doing a cursory glance at the numbers, when you look at projected 21, which is 267,400, and then you see projected 22, and you see 552,400, you say, whoa, what's going on? But really, you have to take 267,400 and add to that 205,600 to get a comparison over time for the total Pip Moyer.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's what was confusing. And, I mean, it's the accounting changed. So the accounting changed, but it looked like there was this huge burst of spending going on in Pip Moyer. And so when I first looked at that, I said, holy cow, what's going on here? And then I thought, well, maybe the pool is in there or some other expense, but
we
no,
tried to capture that with the note underneath each budget summary
right
in the book.
Yeah. So
And we can't, if we're using OpenGov, we can't combine them because it's using a standard org number and account number. And so we have to break them into two tables. Otherwise, we have to create something completely separate for a combined presentation.
Right. So I was trying to give you a sense of the kinds of look that I was trying to do from across all tables and even within tables, and just going from org chart to staffing chart to dollar chart, and it is confusing. So I think enough said on that. I will look at the email that was sent this morning, and that may well have done the trick. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Certainly.
Again, mine's is more theoretical, but just trying to get another understanding of ways to save. If we were to lease out the Pip Moyer Recreational Center, aka privatization of the Pip Moyer Recreational Center, how would the city budget look? How much would we save? How much revenue potentially do you believe we could bring in if we were to say, like, to the Central Y, yes, you can lease out this facility and run your programs out of this, but you have to pay the city?
I don't know who that question's being addressed to. I don't
Well,
think anybody.
I can tell you that we looked at those numbers a few years ago, back when we were considering the Y as a partner on the pool, and there were numbers then. I don't know that those are numbers. I remember riding in a van with Director Trader up in Baltimore, and we were hashing those numbers out, and Director Trader was pointing out there are some things that are not actually, that are sort of hidden underneath, so that it's not a full comparison. But I don't have those at hand, and this is actually before Director Dickinson or Katie's time with the city. There is an answer to that. It is the answer that was provided by the Y of Central Maryland, who was a potential bidder for things. So you would need to understand that the numbers may put forth the best case. And there were savings, but it was also confused with the cost of them providing a pool for us versus us doing it ourselves, and a number of other things. And eventually, we decided to finance the pool ourselves with the money from the sale of the golf course. And those numbers went on a shelf. And I probably have them on a shelf in my basement. And I can get them for you, I think, or someone else might be able to get them for you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in just seeing something like that because look, the pool's built now. We don't have to give the pool away in any deal like that. You could literally lease out the massive facility on Hilltop Lane, which could potentially bring in new traffic and new revenue because they would offer programs that we currently don't offer or that we contract out that are expensive. I mean, just a number of opportunities. And there is always the potential to keep on staff to manage, like I said, the pool and other different aspects of recreation. But we could really look at some cost savings probably and a little dollars coming in annually if we were to do something like that. I would be actually very much interested in, I don't know, seeing that, bringing them forward. Obviously, you said it would have to be bid out, a process like that. So whomever is in the recreational game, I'd be interested in seeing that.
So that I should let Director Trader speak to that first, but I would just point out, what do you do with the employees that are there now? Are they the ones that are providing these rented out services? And does that presume that we have excess capacity there so we can do all of our programs and do extra services at Pip Moyer? I mean,
that's always the question on everything. What do we do with the employees in every instance? And I don't know. That has to be something that would obviously have to be thought out, but that can't be, my teacher used to have this slogan on the back of her classroom in high school: everything you want is on the opposite side of fear. And we have this natural fear of just not even doing the research or looking in because of the employees, which I care very much about. I know they run magnificent programs, in particular the program that Ron Shea Clark runs there. I'm a big fan of in the communities. And things like that can still go on through grants and stuff. But I'd be interested in seeing how much the city could save and how much money could be brought in if we were to do something like this.
Right.
So let me say, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mr. Trader.
Yeah, I think we should let Mr. Trader speak for himself.
Let me say, Alderman Gay, that I respect your interest in saving money. We all are, but there's some ramifications to outsourcing the Pip Moyer Center. And one of the most outstanding ramifications and most negative ramifications is the public that we serve. The YMCA, for example, whom I worked for as a program director just before I came to the city of Annapolis, is a nonprofit organization that operates in a for-profit manner. Make no doubt about that. Okay, they are in business to make money. Take the senior population in Annapolis who will not be able to afford a YMCA cost for membership. That's a fact. And other aspects of our community that would not be able to afford a YMCA or any other for-profit entity that would potentially take over the Pip Moyer Recreation Center. There's other populations that would not be able to afford it. I think that's one of the negative ramifications of outsourcing a facility of that size, because whoever you bring in, and I've been in recreation business for almost 40 years, they're coming in to make money, okay? And they're here to sell programs. They're here to sell memberships, okay? Right now, we are by definition, we are in the community recreation entity of recreation. In other words, we provide the needs of the community. We are not here to make a profit in recreation. The definition of community recreation is to provide the needs of the community. You know, and the pool aspect is a courtesy. We will never, no one in across the country, no municipalities across the country actually make a profit from aquatics. It's just a matter of fact, and it's deemed as a courtesy to the public. I think that, you know, once you start to think outsourcing, you have to think about the constituencies that you hold very dear and that you speak about in various entities in terms of their fundamental welfare. Now, the welfare of recreation and leisure is in jeopardy once you move to a private for-profit entity and outsourcing of the Pip Moyer Recreation Center or the pool.
I agree with certain things that you say, and I completely disagree with others. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation and this dialogue over an important issue. I agree that, and I don't want to be selective in saying the why, because again, any process like this would have to be open to a bid, and it could be any organization. But I agree, they are a for-profit organization, which is the structure that we need because we are a cash-starved city. We need revenue. And so I think that, yes, you lose the community feel that we have at Recreation and Parks, which is good, but it only goes as far as Recreation and Parks, because even as I pitched in the last budget for Recreation and Parks to partner with HACA for a more comprehensive community recreational approach, we didn't do that. And so, I mean, it is community based, but loosely. But what I would like to see is that if we were to, lease something like this out or get into some sort of partnership with an organization that is actually bringing in money to the recreational side of things, who is to say that we can't use that revenue or that we can't use the potential? I'm trying to pull it up here in the budget book, but as my colleagues have mentioned, it's split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, I'll do 7 because I wouldn't dare mess with the Stanton Center. It's split into 7 different budgets, so I can't even give you a total. What's the total? The amount of expenses we put towards Parks and Recs? Because somebody, I see about 779,000 at Pip Moyer.
Hold on, I'll get you the number.
Okay.
It'll just take me a minute.
Yeah, no problem.
For 22, their entire budget, all divisions, 5,783,000.
So
There's
you
a
can,
Save View and OpenGov too. That'll support those.
I'm sorry?
There's a Save View and OpenGov too if you want to look historical.
Yeah, so yeah, I was looking at that, but I couldn't get that number that she just said, the 5.8. I could only see it in sections. But so say we don't get rid of the whole 5.8 because obviously we want to keep pool and we want to, but you could do a lot with $2 million for poor and minority communities, plus the revenue that would come in through any recreation that could be put into general funds or whatever. You could do a lot with the revenue here, and I think we have a lot of room here to create opportunities for our constituents. We won't find it in fire. We won't find it in police. I mean, we've banged our heads against that wall. We got to find it in other places. This is a great opportunity. And I'm not saying get rid of the entire staff. Again, I'm not subscribing to, anything like that. What I'm saying is that if we could lease this out, we could potentially create some revenue for ourselves. And I would really, really like to see some numbers on that.
And keep in mind that when if you lose the operation of the facility, you also lose the revenue it brings in. They bring in revenue.
Yeah, but but if the city owns the facility, correct?
Yes.
it could be leased or rented. I mean, we don't have to give up ground rights.
The only revenue we would get is a lease.
Is
What
the
money
lease
they
revenue.
make, they keep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
a facility that size, with the recreational space that it offers, and a hot real estate market and a city that has a lot to offer, I'm sure we could get a significant amount of even of money in rent and lease then.
What you have to keep in mind, and this is what my perspective is on a lease agreement with the Pip Moyer Recreation Center. All the baseball fields that we own, we only really own Truxton Park. We don't own Bates. We don't own Germantown. Those are Anne Arundel County properties. So they're not going to come in and lease the Pip Moyer Recreation Center plus the land. So that land and Pip Moyer Center will be one entity, and that they will be leasing. Okay, and the money that they make, they keep. They just give us a lease payment.
Okay, but even if I'm just looking at that facility and all of that included in one, I'm not a real estate expert. I'm not in the business of commercial real estate, but I'm assuming it'd be a pretty significant amount of money on an annual basis.
I don't think it's worth the demise of the public that we serve, and it will happen, especially those people in Hacker, especially those low-income people who will not be able to afford. They will give you, we really appreciate the low income, and we will give scholarships, but they will be in limited versions. The access that the public has to the Pip Moyer Center today, they will not have under a lease agreement with an outside entity.
Can I interject with a question there, Director Trader? Do we have counts of people from public housing that participate in our Parks and Recs programs?
I can give you a history of it. I mean, it goes back, since I first came here in 2006. And we continue to serve the hacker organizations in various ways, pop-up camps, rock climbing. They come to our special events. We send invitations out to them, and we never charge them anything.
Well, that would be good to have. That was also my understanding, and I wasn't quite on the council. Well, I was when Pip Moyer opened, but I wasn't when it was in the planning stages. But it was to be a place for people to come, and particularly those who needed scholarships that couldn't go to the more expensive places like the Annapolis Athletic Club here in my neighborhood and things like that. So you've made the point several times today that there is a strong social purpose, and I think that is a role of government, local government, is to fulfill those social purpose needs, but I've never really seen the documentation of that. So,
and that was Mr. Chair, that was the point that I was about. We don't know because there wasn't any data, and as based on the conversation we had last week, there was no scholarship data calculated, or there's loose estimates on a spreadsheet. But and to that point, community services are the first thing to be cut. When the pandemic started, the very first thing that was cut from Parks and Recs, and one of the very first things, was the program that they were running for the bilingual groups in the classrooms. It was cut instantly. So this, community cares thing is selective at best. So if we don't look at leasing it, then I'll bring this up, the director and the city manager be open to creating some MOU or something with HACA so that we can assist in the upkeep of recreational, their recreational facilities and properties as it relates to their, outdoor facilities. There was an incident with a kid falling and cutting his leg on one of the playgrounds recently that was taped up, and Is that something that we could do? Because that's community recreation right there. That's literally right in their backyard.
Well, we have been doing that all the while. For over 10 years, we have been conditioning their baseball field. Our Parks Division go to their location and we redo their field every single year. And that's one aspect.
The field behind my house.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a fact.
So,
that's a fact.
Let me
And must I add, free of charge.
let me check in with the committee, because I think this is a very valuable discussion, and one not unlike what we had with police the other night when we had the meeting with them, and some of the discussion last night. But I know we say this every year, right after we pass the budget, we'll come back to these discussions, and then we never do. We're usually so exhausted, the last thing we want to see is the budget book. But I think economic circumstances and growth in our spending relative to our revenue is going to bring these questions to bear. But is it something that we can do something about with this fiscal 22 budget? And that's always the rub. So it's always easy to say, well, we need to balance the budget, and the quickest way to do that is to raise taxes. Because the things like, we could cut services, we could cut the fire marshals out of fire and save 5 positions. We could do that, but we can't do it overnight, and we can't do it in time to balance this current budget. We could cut some of the administrative staff out of police. We could do it, but we can't do it overnight. Same thing, I'm sure we could find numbers of people in every one of the departments, but there's always this timing disconnect between making changes on that side of the ledger versus getting the budget passed. And that's part of the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about having these meetings of the council as a whole. But the things that we're talking about right now, outsourcing Pip Moyer, outsourcing the pool, all of those things don't happen in a matter of just a couple of months. Those take lots of planning, and they cause lots of dislocation. Even talking about these things, if any of the staff are watching, causes great morale issues, and questions about how I'm valued. So I'm going to be asking the city manager, how do we actually, this is a management function, it's a senior management function, it's a city manager function, and it is something that I predict is sooner rather than later. As soon as the glut of one-time only COVID money goes away, the reality of the budget in fiscal 24, 23 or 24 is going to be hard on us. And we're going to be looking for those things, and we should be looking for them now. What if we have to reduce our spending by $100 or by $10 million? How do we do that? And that is all part of contingency planning, but it isn't part, it isn't something we can do by June 8th or whenever it is when we're voting on the budget. These are all really good questions, and the other high-level policy questions we've been asking, but I'm not sure they help us decide on the Parks and Recs budget or any of the other budgets. Director Gerald, you had your hand up. I mean, City Manager Gerald, sorry.
I think I still have the floor, correct?
Well, let me see what this response for the city manager, and we'll come back to you, Alderman Gay.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to say that I think these are very, very important discussions because, and I emphasize here, we have a balanced budget. We have a balanced budget for FY22. So we're not seeking cuts right now to balance the budget. We have a balanced budget, and we think we're going to have a balanced budget in 23. So what we need to do is look forward a couple of years of when we don't have this ARPA money that's going to help us balance the budget. And when we need to address the structural deficit, we need to have these discussions that Alderman Gay is leading, because we need to look at services and what services do we need to change. As Alderwoman von Lacenoy says you can't cut people without cutting services. So we need to look at services and which ones are most important that we maintain and which ones we can either eliminate or we can outsource. And that, that's what we're really talking about here is outsourcing a service, in this case, if it were a rec center. But that's a 2 or 3 year discussion. And that's the timing that we need these types of discussions and these types of decisions, because it does take a while to implement these. So thank you, Alderman Gay, for letting me speak.
No problem. I think the thing that just frustrates me is that we are, at least the 2 years that I've been on the council, it's been like just getting by, like, oh, we, just these little, and it's like, well, why not do it now? You just made a point of, 2 or 3 years down the road. Why not start it now? Why not, prepare ourselves for worst case scenario? We don't know if the housing market is going to crash and these great real estate deals and land values that our constituents have is going to last out. And if this property tax, we don't know. And so my thing is, let's make the best judgments now so that we are not scraping by passing the budget, what I think is a $2.5 million surplus, and or roughly around that. I think you said that's what would be in savings, something like that. And then even the bond people, when they were presenting, I remember that Davenport presentation, they were saying we were right in the middle, but we barely had any room to wiggle. And so I want to have the serious conversations now rather than later and see what can be done in this budget. But again, that takes 5 votes. Jody, I just have a quick question as it relates to Rexham Park. This would be a one-time, it wouldn't be an annual, if we were to cut these things, and again, I'm just speaking hypothetically. I'm about to read you out the list.
Okay.
It would just be once. So my total, what I've totaled it out to be is $2.6 million, $281,100 in health and wellness.
Hold on. I don't have a good writing place here. Okay.
May I ask, is this all in the Rexham Parks budget?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
where do we find that? What page are you looking at, Alderman Gay?
Well, I used the OpenGov, and what I did was just
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So there's $281,000 in $281,100 in health and wellness, $637,200 in camps and classes, $294,900 in sports, $641,900 in admin, and $779,500 in PIP Moyer. I noticed that I didn't touch Latchkey or Stanton, considering that and I also didn't touch Pool. So I didn't mess with Pool, Latchkey, or Stanton. So that came out to be about $2.6 million. That'd be a one-time, like if we were to cut that, we would only have that once. It wouldn't be an annual save. We would lose that revenue. Any revenue produced by Parks and Rec, except any leasing financing brought in, correct?
So are you talking about cutting those programs completely?
Yes.
What makes you think it's one time? You're going to cut them forever, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying we would only save that amount one time, because after that you can't cut it twice.
Well, your budgets into the future will be reduced by a like amount forever. Now you have to consider how much revenue they're bringing in too. So your net savings is not going to be $2.5 million.
So can we do that, the math on that, to see what the net savings would be?
Yeah. Hold on. We'll have to divide it out. Their revenues are not divided by these same categories. So it would take a minute for me to do it. But so you're saying cut all camps and classes, cut all health and wellness, cut all, what was this, sports?
It was health and wellness, camps and classes, sports, admin, and PIP Moyer.
You're gonna cut admin?
I'm just asking for a hypothetical solution.
Okay, if you will send that to me in an email, I'll have to look for the revenues that offset it because they're gonna be in various accounts. And I'll need help from the Rec and Park staff.
Okay.
And it's not gonna be 2.5 million, and I don't know how you run a department without having somebody supervising it. Or
Well,
directing.
that's why look, I'm trying to get an understanding like you. I don't understand why when I ask these hypothetical questions, everybody's, I'm just trying to figure out what's the best solution to move forward. Understanding that we can't cut police, we can't cut fire, and our constituents are complaining because the budget is crazy. And so what do? I mean, I just can't go back and tell them, oh, well, we can't do anything. I'm just looking for solutions, just like I've done in every department. And I'm thankful for the department heads for, entertaining these conversations, but it just has to be done. I mean.
So in Alderman Gay, we can cut fire. We can contract out the fire marshals, those 5 people. We can contract out bomb dogs or turn it over to the state. We can do that, but we can't do it without a plan, and the savings won't be immediate. But I think your point is well taken. If we don't start now under some auspices, we'll never do it because there'll never be the time to initiate it. And I think that the city manager agrees with that. But, we're back to the same old rub. We've got a couple of weeks to pass this budget. And we're not going to cut all of these things out of Parks and Recs. First of all, there just won't be the votes, but also it wouldn't be an appropriate business-like way to go about doing that. They're huge changes and they have huge impacts on lots of people. And there won't be any immediate backfill for any of those programs. Camps and health and wellness are important to the people who are receiving them. And we've made a commitment to them, and we can't just drop the ball and go off in another direction. But
so, Mr. Chair, you committed to cutting fire and police?
I said we can, and I think that we can find cuts in every department, but not reap the results of it overnight. Suppose we decided we're going to contract out fire marshals, all 5 of those positions. Those 5 firefighters don't go away. They're still going to be in the fire department unless you're going to fire them, specifically fire them. So you don't reap the savings, and then you do incur the cost of contracting out. We contract out the fire prevention engineer right now. It is contracted out. The Chief Romali was talking about wanting to bring that on as a permanent staff position. That position has existed all along, but as a contract position. And one of the nice things about contract positions is they don't come with pension plan costs and other benefit costs. So there are things that we can do, but we can't do it in 2 weeks and reap the benefits of it overnight. And it really does need to be planned.
So you want to do it next term is what you're saying?
Well, I don't even know how to start the mechanism to put that on the drawing board. It almost seems to me like you would need to pass an ordinance or some kind of a major procurement. I would assume you would want to do an efficiency study of the delivery of city services and what are the things that we could contract out or shift over to the county, which, as we know from our conversation with fire last night, so you're still going to have to provide firefighting and ambulance services. Those are the fundamentals.
I think that's the thing that I'm asking and understanding. And what I just gave to you was worst case scenario. Obviously, come on, we're going to cut summer camps in the middle of the summer. Like, we wouldn't do that. But what I'm just trying to say is that, okay, then what are the best steps? Do we need to use one-time funds of $200,000 to put together a research committee into the outsourcing of it? We just give us instructions so we know what to do, but we aren't even getting that.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely correct. And I just got an earful from a constituent about that this morning. So it's not new music. City Manager Gerald.
And Alderwoman
Process would be-
Finlayson, who's been
Yes,
waving
I know.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Finlayson, this will be really short. So the process would be that we would put together an RFP. I mean, that's the process that we would have to decide if we want the employees to be able to bid on to keep their jobs, or if we just strictly want to outsource it, we would put together an RFP. We would develop what we thought the cost should be, and put it out and accept proposals. And based on the proposals, then a decision would be made whether we want to move forward with that idea, based on what the cost savings would be, what the cost would be, what the impact to employees would be. We would always try to protect the employees. So in the RFP, we would put a statement that they have the right of first refusal for those jobs. But that would be the process, and that's not a short process.
Would there need to be authorizing legislation, an ordinance, or some directive to begin to pursue those RFPs?
Well, I think we would need the sense of the council that their support for going forward with that, because eventually the council would have to support that initiative and the budget that's involved with that.
All right. Alderwoman Finlayson and then Ms. Smith.
I think if we were to speak to the law department, there should be information about a prior investigation similar to what Alderman Gay is proposing. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Elson was the one who helped with that process, where we actually looked at the benefits versus the expense of outsourcing Pip Moyer particularly. So, there is a starting point somewhere in the research, probably in the law department, on this effort. And I'm not sure whether Mr. Trader was at the Stanton Center when we did this before or not, but there is research that will get us started. My other point, and something that hasn't been mentioned, is debt service. And I'm sure Ms. Dickinson will bring that to the group that's going to investigate this, because that's an expense that has to be considered in outsourcing also. Pip Moyer is not paid for. We have debt on that resource. And so that has to be calculated in also. And lastly, speaking briefly on the community asset. And if we don't think the community values all of the programs that Pip Moyer offers and the Stanton Center, then we should ask them just to make sure. I've advocated for a number of years now that we do a community survey and we ask the community what it is that they value, what it is that they're willing to invest their tax dollars in. And then that should guide us as to what we should be looking at eliminating as far as services and opportunities. So, thank you.
All right. Ms. Smith, and please, Susie.
I was just going to say on behalf of the mayor, and I think the whole council, the council wants to have a policy value conversation before you go down the question of then what do you cut and what you don't cut. And if you need to organize that, we can certainly organize that out of the mayor's office and have that leadership and put a conversation together with the council. Because this isn't just a budget decision. This is a what's the future of the city decision. It's in constituencies. And as Alderwoman Finlayson just says, perhaps we want a survey. That's certainly one way we can do it. We can do listening sessions, et cetera. So I think that this is, if we're going to go down this path, as David Gerald has said, we need some, I think, political judgment into this, that we need the elected officials to be in it. And it's not just something one refers off to the administration. And if we need help on that, the mayor's office is happy to help on that.
Thank you for that. And I think the momentum for this has been building for quite a while. As I said, after we had our meeting with police, I think that the council really did get to this, and stimulated by questions from Alderman Gay, to be sure, we got to this high level policy kind of discussion. And it is quite overdue, I believe, and it is not going to be easy. There's going to be some tough questions, and we're going to be whipsawed back and forth by a lot of our constituents. There is a huge group of people that are big fans of Parks and Recs, say, why don't you cut transportation? And then there's a huge group of people that are big fans of transportation and say, why don't you cut something else? We're not going to get particularly clear signals from our constituents, and probably not from a survey, although I do agree it's probably worth trying that. But I think the real point is, and I think this is something I'm going to ask the Finance Committee to consider in our report to the council, the time to start doing this for the ensuing fiscal years is now, not in December when we start putting together the fiscal 23 budget. It's now, and it's now for 24 probably, certainly 23 at the earliest. I think that it is something that the mayor's office would want to take a lead in and help direct those resources. So but I think it needs to be put together and put to a vote on the council. There may not be a majority of people that want to do this. I think there is, but we haven't tested that. So at this point, we're well into the meeting. Are there any other questions for Director Trader at this point? And as I say, I'll look at the email from this morning and see if I have any more technical kinds of budgeting questions. But if there are no questions from the committee, thank you, Director.
I would like to make a comment.
Please do.
In pursuing budget cuts or the outsourcing of the Pip Moyer Recreation Center to accomplish some revenue for the city, to exclusively do that by way of recreation in the Pip Moyer Center is indicative of some studies that have been conducted by some universities, as well as the National Recreational Parks Association. And this study showed that city officials tend to see police and fire as more important than recreation. And when you look at recreation and the Pip Moyer Recreation Center and not put police and fire or other departments in that same discussion, it's indicative of that fact. To think that there's going to be a real panacea of savings by outsourcing the Pip Moyer Recreation Center, while at the same time demolishing the value of the citizens of our city. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And I don't think, I don't even believe that Alderman Gay was indicating only looking at Parks and Recs, because we talked and he's mentioned police and fire. I think we need to look at it globally, but we need to look at it in an organized fashion, not just a hit here, hit there kind of way. And so I take your comments to heart, Director Trader, and I think that this is something that we're going to have to noodle around with the council and have the mayor in attendance. After all, he is part of the council. And it just can't be focused on one thing. On the other hand, I will say that the public safety and public works are the things that I think our constituents are the most united on. They want clean water in, dirty water out. They all want to know that an ambulance will come to their door. They want to know that the police are protecting them in the middle of the night. And those are traditional bedrock values for municipalities. But I think you're absolutely right. It would be foolish to be narrowly focused or one-sided in how we look at this picture. We do need to look at it globally. Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry, I might have missed this in the discussion, but are we equating outsourcing of the PIP Moyer as a cut in services? I mean, wouldn't the objective be to provide the same services in this outsourcing? I'm hearing the terms exchanged as far as cut in services equals outsourcing PIP Moyer, and is that really the objective here?
Well,
are we trying to obtain the same service in outsourcing?
I'll get to you, Fred. We're being kind of loose in our language, and I think we also need to be fair. Outsourcing and cutting services, I believe, and I'm testing this with you, Alderman Gay, is only one half of the equation, because you can outsource and cut expenditures and reduce spending and reduce taxing, or you can cut services here with the goal that you want to increase and spend elsewhere so that you don't change the tax burden. And I think there's a little bit of both going on. Some of it is to slow down the spending, to slow down the burden on the property tax, and some of it is to redirect spending here, generate revenue, and repurpose it someplace else. And that shoe has not dropped. Alderman Payon.
Thank you. Look, the reason for this is to try to cut costs without cutting services. You and I, Ross, particularly, have looked at a number of different departments over the years. We've looked at fire, we've looked at police, and we've looked at rec and parks. And in each case, nobody's looking to cut services, at least necessary services. We're looking to, make no mistake, we're looking to cut costs, see if we can't have things done more efficiently and cost the taxpayers less money, period.
Well, that is certainly one objective. That isn't everybody's objective, but I think it's a worthy goal, but it also has to compete with other goals. So with this, I would urge that we move on. We have the Chief of Staff, Ms. Smith, with us. I think there might have been a little bit of miscommunication at an earlier meeting. I had asked that if we could just I had decided I was going to do it myself, recrafting all of the dense paragraphs into bullet points for the thing from the Office of Mayor. And then Alderman Payon said he was starting to do it. And then it was suggested, well, really, why don't we have the Chief of Staff do that? And as you said earlier in this meeting, Ms. Smith, that some of it is in bullets, some of it is, some of it isn't. It's kind of easier to trace. And one of the reasons for wanting to trace, by the way, Director Trader, I didn't mean to end abruptly. I wanted to thank you for your participation and help. And we do take your cautions to heart. I do. We can't just be cavalier or capricious. This has to be done with a great deal of thought and recognizing the value that is being produced, and particularly value for a constituency that may have no other alternatives. And so we can't lose sight of that. And I think that was part of the spirit behind building PIP Moyer in the first place, let alone the pool and other things. But returning to the Chief of Staff, that was
the Chair, if I could really quick.
Yeah, thank you, Director Trader. Alderman Gay?
Yeah, when you say that, Mr. Chair, you have to take into consideration when you say things like they would have no other option or et cetera. They could have an option, a better option within their communities if we were to invest equally. And that was the original intent of this conversation. to bring up that proposed amendment from last year, where we collaborate with these organizations, not picking up their kids and taking them camping or fishing for 3 hours, investing actual dollars into their recreational infrastructure. And so that is what I would like to see. Make no mistake about it.
Right. I understand that, and I appreciate that. And that is what I was saying when Alderman Payon is talking about reducing the burden on property taxes. I believe you're thinking about alternate ways of providing services and repurposing dollars. That could potentially lead to tax increases. We don't know because we haven't explored those things. But you're talking about alternate ways of doing things, and I get that. And as Alderman Payon was saying, we have looked at that from time to time, not in a very robust fashion, but we have thought about those things, and we need to continue to think about those things. Oh, that's the value of the questions you're asking. As the city manager said earlier, these are things that we continually need to be thinking about. It's a continuous improvement kind of analysis. Are there better ways to do business? And some of those better ways of doing business cut costs. Some of those better ways of doing business reallocate costs. And we have to get into some heavy lifting to look at those things. All right. Ms. Smith, we keep jumping in and out of this dialogue. That was my single question, was just a streamlined presentation. It wasn't with content, but the reasons I started to say I wanted to look at that, it was because when we had the dialogue with the police department, it struck me that there are a lot of things that are going on in parallel within the police department and within the mayor's office. And it's always been a concern, I think shared by other members. Alderwoman Finlayson has mentioned this, that we have a coordinated effort. And these were questions we asked you when you spoke to us before, but they came up again when we were listening to all of the different programs that Chief Jackson and his staff were enumerating as part of their community policing program. So one of the reasons why I wanted to look at the bullet pointing of your presentation was to see what kind of crosswalk we could do to the bullet pointing we got from the police department and other departments. By the way, I think Parks and Recs does some of these things as well. So we really want to look at the coordination across all of the efforts of the administration to make sure that we're being efficient and effective.
Can I respond?
Please. Yeah. Stop me before I talk some more.
Right. There are several programs that look like they are the same between the police department or Jackson Park, but they, and generally speaking, we're working together on those programs. I think the difference is, and I know the council has expressed an interest for the city to go in this direction. We are, the police department looks at community policing from a police department perspective. There is a whole different perspective, whether it's health or providing for services or opportunities for low-income kids or sometimes minority kids or adults. And I think what the council has thought, and I know the mayor has worked on, because this is part of his One Annapolis, is how do we give opportunities to people other than through the lens of the police department. However, we have several things we're working on together. I mean, the LEAD program, while it's in the mayor's office, and it will be a different model than in other places in the state because it's being run out of the mayor's office, and that's what they wanted. That's what the governor's office wanted to do. So I think we're, we have the 150% group. That's a group of people who we've brought together from different departments, because what is the you know, it is, where is the cross sections from that? Where are the services better? Because we talk to each other, we work with each other. And that's our, you know, this is, we're trying to sort of push against maybe the stovepipe of we do one thing, the police department does something else, and so on. We are, you know, we don't have a lot of people, as you know, in the mayor's office, so we're not out there with a number of people, but we support what the community service efforts are in the police department, and what in fact, what we try to do in Rexon Park, we try to model something and get it institutionalized in Rexon Park. So, which is what we did with the pop-ups, for example. The pop-ups started in the mayor's office because we realized that we had a camp program that unless you had a parent that was really good on the computer day one of whenever the opportunities, and you could afford to pay ahead for your camps, by the time the camp came around, they were filled. So we wanted to be able to have available some interesting things that would be done at the kind of more the last minute that we didn't charge for. Some interesting things came out of that. The drone camp, for example, that was one of the ones that started, and now we've institutionalized it in Rexon Parks. That's where it belongs. But we needed to experiment to see where the need was. Why were people not being able to have camps? And I'm sure several of you and the mayor said everybody should have a camp opportunity. That was our goal a couple of years ago. So it's not a worry really of are we competing with each other or running parallel tracks. Generally we are not. There may be some things that they do and that we do, not very many. We work from a different perspective. We work very much more in the community. The police department is, again, an example, has some programs that we just assume they're going to always have. They're going to do these barbecues and things. They're going to do the movies sometimes. There's nothing the matter with that. It's just not, they're not enough for all of the various communities in the city of Annapolis that don't have access to them. So there's nothing that, when you have a few people, you don't try to duplicate. You try to figure out what's needed, what's more urgent. That's what prompts us to move into something.
Thank you for that. Are there questions from the committee or anything that needs amplification?
Mr. Chair, you had raised an issue, I think we all did, at the initial presentation about the impact of the programs and how we measure the success of programs. And we were looking for, and Ms. Smith, thank you for what you provided. We were looking for how many people are impacted by the various programs. And in one scenario, we would be able to see where there is a duplication. But we know that does exist from the grants that have come before us that have had a police function, but the grants that came out of the mayor's office. So I'm still looking through all of this information to try to garner what you and I had asked for previously.
If I could respond to that.
Please.
We don't work like the departments work. What I gave you and what was the updated information is quantifying what we do. The measurement of if it's successful is, a different kind of measurement in that when you get, the cost benefit stuff is more appropriate to streets and other programs that the cities do in departments. What we do is measured in outreach. It's measured in people being brought into services or communication with the city that weren't before. And we just keep going on that. I mean, as I said, we have quantified what we do. I guess the measurement in the end is going to be whether communities believe that that's what we're doing. And we keep having new things. I know that it's hard, but when we see a need, we try to put some resources to it. So this is not, these are models. When it works, people come and people participate. And I might say there's nobody else doing the things we do. So the outreach, the conversations with people, I mean, nobody else was in PPEs, knocking on people's doors and in communities, trying to figure out what they knew about how to deal in the COVID situation. We suited people up. Nobody else was doing that. Nobody else was doing that in the county, let alone in the city. Frankly, I'm not sure anybody was doing it in the state based on the response that we got to it. It was so unusual. So we quantified and that's there from Laura and from Tola. And I'm proud of that. I think the city ought to be proud of that. That's what we do. We don't have an ongoing program that measures stuff like that in the same way that a department would. We're not ever going to be able to do that. We're not ever going to probably try to do that. Maybe that's wrong in your view, but we keep going. And I mentioned the last time that one of the things that has been not a success yet, but I hope will be, is the opioid stuff. We know that we've got a problem in Annapolis on overdoses. We haven't solved that. And I don't know if it's ours to solve or the health department's to solve. I keep looking at that question and trying to figure it out. So there's things we're not successful at yet either. But when people were worried about guns in their houses and in their neighborhoods, we try to put people out there to help. It's just a different role than some of the other departments or other parts of the city.
Thank you for that. I understand how you guys function very differently. But you cited a couple of different examples of data that we could really use and appreciate. For example, how many opioid presentations were there? How many people were reached by those opioid presentations? The council had a role in distributing masks, and we distributed probably 50,000 masks between the 8 of us throughout the initial pandemic, and Shields, the same thing. So we understand that that's an effort, and we know we could quantify how many we distributed. So that's the kind of data that I would hope that everybody is wanting to use. You mentioned bringing in organizations that would not be part of the city normally. And that it would be terrific to have a list of those organizations so we know what additional resources are available, not just to the mayor's office, but to everyone. So, that's why we're trying to come up with data that we could use as the city, as opposed to just a small group of people. Is there in the mayor's budget the $40,000 additional needed for the opioid program? Jody, maybe, or Ms. Dickinson, I'm sorry. Can you
So I
I
can't,
asked
I'm not
about
gonna
this
be able,
yesterday.
yeah, I'm not gonna be able to answer that off the top of my head. We're gonna have to dig into the detail. Katie, are you
Okay.
on? Or are you away?
I'm here.
Do we know if the $40,000 for the opioid grant is in the mayor's budget?
Oh,
I'll look into it.
No, it's not.
It's not the type of thing we would typically put in the mayor's budget, so.
Oh, in the mayor's budget? No. You mean like the mayor's
Jody,
office?
it should be in OEM's budget.
Right,
That's
yeah.
where that grant falls. And we fund, again, it feels like Groundhog Day because we discussed this yesterday, but so we didn't get the grant this year, the full grant that we normally get from the health department. So we augmented by $40,000. We didn't put that into the budget for FY22 because we expect to get the full amount of the grant that we've received in past years. So it's not budgeted. If in fact we don't get that amount, then we will certainly try to come up with $40,000 again, because that program needs to be funded.
Okay, so we don't have to relive this again. So the 35,000, I think it's 35,000 that's in OEM's budget then. With the
So,
expectation we'll get the other 40 from the state,
all right.
or from the county, I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask Katie to check that, to look at the grants that are in OEM and see if that opioid grant is among them. It would be in the grants fund, not in their operating budget. So I want to make sure, because when we looked at the list of OEM grants yesterday, none of them were as high as $40,000. So I'm just trying to make sure that that's one of those listed. It doesn't necessarily say opioid grant. There's different titles, and that's why I'm not sure which one we're looking for specifically.
I don't think the decision's been made, so you might not have it reflected yet. And it's more than 40, I think. But anyway, it's that's a submission that Director Simmons has made, and I do not believe that it is, we have an answer yet on it.
Yes, and sometimes when we don't know what we're getting, or we're not sure it's going to be awarded, they won't put it in the budget, and we'll come to you with a supplemental appropriation request when we do get the award.
Okay, of course, I spoke to Director Simmons about this. 40 from the city, 40 from the county. To make that doesn't equal to 90,000, which is what I think the program cost. So I'm just trying to make sure that we have the initial 40,000 with the expectation that the county will come up with the other half of it.
That money gets divided between the fire department, the police department. Some comes to the mayor's office.
Exactly.
And some stays with OEM.
Yes.
So as of right now, I don't believe we have the city's 40,000 in our budget. Am I right? City manager? I don't remember us putting that 40 in there for 22.
We didn't, because we talked about the fact that we thought we would get the grant, the full amount. So we didn't budget for it. We just need to find out what they call that grant so we can look to see if that's included. But it's something that we have to apply for each year, as was said, and OEM normally does that.
Mm-hmm.
And they have done it. They just don't have a response yet.
I just want to make sure that our portion is in the budget.
And it's not.
So I don't believe we budgeted anything in our budget for that. So if you want to put that in there, that's going to require a change.
Okay. Well, whatever I have to do.
So I'd like to, Alderman Tierney, if I could for a second, then I'll get to you.
Absolutely.
I wanted to return to Alderwoman Finlayson's question. I'm looking at the second page of the discussion before the Finance Committee, and I'm looking specifically at community outreach, and I'm looking at some of the programs like the LEAD program and the No Harm VIP program, and those were programs that Atola and you came to the Finance Committee and explained the spending. And if I remember, I believe it was the VIP, there were going to be 10 people who were going to be hired to go out into the community. They were going to be armed with hats and T-shirts and various other kinds of things. And I'm assuming that happened, but to Alderwoman Finlayson's point, there isn't an accounting here. It is just simply saying we created the program. Now, it could well be that the program is still in its formative stage and there aren't numbers ready, and that's why when I said I'd like to kind of see this broken down into bullet points. So I look for the LEAD program, I look for the VIP program, and some of these other programs, the 150 group, I look for those as broken out, and then I look to see beside them metrics, like we were able to locate 6 of the VIP community representatives, and we had 10,000 T-shirts and hats produced, and 60% of those were distributed. Sort of the success measures, or the accountability or quantification of what these programs did. And this talks about them in the NAM program, same thing. And I know that's been going on for quite a while. But it only simply mentions the names. It doesn't tell us who is doing the outreach and who they reached. And it would really be great to say, we did this outreach, and as a result, we were able to connect these people with that service, or we were able to get some people to some clinical or psychological care. And so I think that was the sort of question. And then Alderwoman Finlayson embarrassed me because I probably still have at least half of the masks and a good portion of the shields still undistributed. So I would look pretty anemic when I would do my quantification of that. So don't count me in the 50,000 distributed, but nevertheless, it was a program that we did and wanted to be doing our part with the opioid outreach. So I think that's where we're looking for measures of success. We started this program, and here's what we did, and here's what happened as a result, and here's where we're planning on going forward. I know Tola is busy doing a lot of things, and I know people are doubling up duties in the office of the mayor, and I know that we don't have an African-American liaison right now, and a lot of things. So it's part of, we have this panoply that's been laid before us with a lot of programs that got initiated. I think you're absolutely right. They seem complementary to and coordinated with various programs that police are doing. That's satisfying. But there isn't any metric that tells us what they've done and what there's still to do.
I do want to say on the no harm program that we've had a little bit of delay in getting that going very much. We've started it, but that one is not. And we did promise reports on that. We don't have anything particularly to report yet, except for the list of sessions. What we're doing is, and I'm just realizing on the how many masks we did 80 to 100, I guess, from just one half of it, and that's just half. So I can't give you what you're asking for, really, because this is the quantification that we have and what we're doing. And we are, of course, responding to the mayor's priorities and to the city's priorities at the same time, or at least as we see the priorities. And we keep going with services. So what you have here is what we have.
Miss,
If this is a continuation of this, Alderwoman Finlayson, and then I'll get to Alderman Terry.
Ms. Smith just mentioned, or you just mentioned, I'm sorry, that we have no African American liaison, which concerns me. So how is that being handled? We had a funded position for an African American liaison. So can you explain what's up with that?
We do have an African American liaison. What we don't have is a public engagement person, which is Will
Who is the African American liaison?
Tola.
Tola. Okay. Does that answer your question, Alderwoman?
Well, yes and no. When I mentioned it to Tola, and I hate being specific with names, he said that he wasn't doing that anymore and that Laura had taken over that.
That's what I understood.
For the health equity, Laura is doing both African American and Latino for health equity, but not for everything else.
Well, what is health equity? What's included in health equity?
Health equity right now is getting people vaccinated. And the really good part about this is that through her own ingenuity, she's gotten the whole team funded probably through, certainly through this year. And we're going to be able to continue it. But it's, as you know, the discrepancy between health services and during the pandemic, what was available for both Latino and African American residents and families was just kind of became like a neon light. So continuing looking at that health equity question was important to us, which is why Laura was able to get a fair amount of money here now to fund both teams. They'll be, and as I say, right now this is about, I've got Gavin calling me. That's what you're hearing. Will you excuse me 1 minute and let me just tell him? Gavin, I'm talking with the Finance Committee. Sorry. So that effort, as it relates to healthcare generally, and what will happen next, is probably whatever comes out of all of this. Is it going to be healthcare availability? Is it going to be a question of other city services and responsible? I'm not quite sure yet what this group will do ongoing, but it's an outgrowth of the pandemic. And right now they're doing clinics and recruiting people to get vaccinated and working in the clinics themselves right now and working in communities to accomplish that. But that is one program. That is not all of the programs that are related to services for African American community members.
Well, there's no question that Laura has done an outstanding job in the Hispanic community. I don't know what, and we've seen the data through the mayor's presentations at the council meeting a few meetings back when he shared the data for the Hispanic community. I've yet to see the data for the African American community, and that's what I'm looking for. And so there's no question she's doing a great job in that respect. I just want to make sure that the African American community gets the same focus. But when do we learn about this new group that has now been created, the Health Equity Group? Is that what you called it?
I call it that. It's not being, the name of it hasn't been changed. That we put them together because, for a couple of reasons, because Tola was working on too many programs to be able to continue to supervise that, and Laura was able to get funding for it. So we put both programs both teams is what it is, same program, both teams under Laura's supervision. The work of the Latino team, which we did the report, which went up till the end of last year, December, is of course different by the nature of the language limitations and the need to figure out how one communicates to Spanish speaking people. The needs of the African American citizens and residents was a question that we had to figure out. What information do you have? What do you know? And how can we bridge that gap? So we could pursue that though with door-to-door and did, and meetings and did, to figure out what did we need to make sure that residents, for example, say in Haka, knew what was accurate in those early days of a year ago. Accuracy, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, but accurate information, and we're dealing with that a little bit right now. What's the actual reaction to getting a shot? There's history and personal choice and a lot of things on the shot. The health equity group is going to be working with that to try to increase in both the African American communities and in the Latino areas, peoples, to try to have them be convinced that this is the right thing to do. It's an uphill battle, frankly. It's especially an uphill battle right now as the general population is not as aggressively seeking vaccinations. So you have to push a little bit harder even, but we are. I mean, anyway, so the two groups, the Take Care groups, which is what it's called, are now, and they still work somewhat differently based on the communities they're serving. It is in fact true that Laura created ways of communication, Spanish speaking, by just figuring out how people who speak Spanish, that was innovative, and that got a lot of attention. It didn't mean we weren't doing African American contacts. It just meant that she figured out, which was a whole texting process and of course Spanish flyers and things like that, producing different materials, and creating, there wasn't a combination of community groups working together. There weren't churches working together. You know, it was starting at zero so that got a lot of attention because it was successful. It doesn't mean that the other work wasn't being done in African American communities.
You're on mute.
I'm sure you're probably aware that many of us have held vaccination clinics, I in my church and others areas around the community. And so, you know, just trying to get our hands around all of the things that are happening. That's what this is about. So thank you.
I am aware of your clinic at your church.
Alderwoman Tierney and then Alderman Payon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to watch. And there's clearly a disconnect here, and I'm sort of intrigued by it. It's sort of like liberal arts and engineering, or you know, just sort of the yin and the yang here. But let me try to help. Susie, you have a department, and you manage a department, and you do eventually have to evaluate performance. And that's part of your job. So that has to be measurable. You previously said that you are looking to appease the mayor's priorities, and you report back to him. How do you do that? You have to give him, measurements. I'm saying that you may have measurable, you may have metrics, but you can't have metrics unless you have a goal. I caution about collecting all this data that I believe my colleagues are asking for, and it just ending up in a so what category. I'm trying to find a way to introduce metrics that serve a purpose. And the very basic thing is to establish a goal. And what problem is that goal trying to fix? And here's the catch. How will you know if you've reached that goal if you don't have your own metrics? They have to be your metrics. They have to serve a purpose. How would you convince others, i.e. the finance department, the finance committee, that you've reached that goal? And hence is the problem, because you don't have those metrics. You're not convincing the finance committee that you've achieved your goal in solving a problem. And that's the crux of this. So I believe that you do have the capability of introducing metrics that serve your purpose, because ultimately you have to sit back with all of these good people and say, have we accomplished what we've set out to accomplish? And it can't just be, yeah, I think so. You do have to have measurable metrics, I guess is the word. So that's what I see is causing this disconnect. And it's unfortunate because what you're doing is so good. I mean, this is a crude analogy, but it's a tough one. Like, you might have a good, this is a terrible analogy, but just the top of my head, you have a car mechanic that wants to fix your car. And why are you fixing that car? Is because you don't want it to get into accidents. Well, how do you know what are the metrics there on knowing if you succeeded? So it's difficult is my point in that crude analogy, but it has to be done if you have to convince the finance committee and the mayor that you're moving forward on this good stuff. So I just want to help. Thank you.
All right, I'm not sure where this leaves us, except Alderman Payon had his hand up, and maybe he'll bring us back on course.
Well, I think we are on course. I want to second what Alderwoman Tierney said. I think metrics are important in setting a goal and certainly in measuring whether the goal has been achieved. The audit committee has been working on this for the last 6 months, Ellie? Do you think, in helping develop metrics, we have somebody we've hired to help department heads set their goals. I asked somebody when the police were here last week, a week before, I think. She was a social worker, and I did not write her name down, but I asked a question that I didn't expect to be answered. How many homicides have your actions prevented? Well, you can't really measure that. I knew that, but I just wanted to see what her response was. And I was shocked when she said, oh, we don't measure things like that. That's the whole purpose of why we've hired her, is to reduce violence, crimes of violence, and ultimately homicides. And she's sitting there telling me with a straight face that, that's not what we do. And it's a real head scratcher as a member of the council and the finance committee that I could get an answer like that. I have to wonder where our priorities are and what really are the goals of the hirings that the mayor has made in that regard, or the police department, as the case might be. It's extremely important to keep metrics as best they can be kept. And of course, before that, set a goal. So, amen, Alderwoman Tierney, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So my summation of this dialogue, which has been going on for a while now, is that while this description tells us a lot of programs that are being embarked on, it isn't helping us understand outcomes. And I think by now there must be some measurable things in terms of t-shirts distributed, hats handed out, other things which are only proxies for necessarily the goods that's done. But one of the justifications for the t-shirts is that it was sort of a symbol to be worn in the community that kind of said, we know you're there and we're paying attention. And so just simple measures like how many of these VIP representatives have we put in place, and how many t-shirts have they been given, and how many have they distributed, is a notional, if not perfect, but at least a notional sense of what we're doing. And I agree that having these programs coming out of the mayor's office as opposed to out of the police department, and Tola, I thought, expressed this very well, is something that gets a particular aura away from the operation. And I subscribed to that. That's why I was excited about the monies and the program. But I think we are being left with somewhat of an empty understanding of, is it moving forward? Is it doing something? Are there things that we need to do? Is there more money needed? Do we need more than 10 people in the community? Or are 5 enough? And we just don't have that sense. And so I think our interest really is born out of some enthusiasm for the programs and the different way to approach things. But we just are kind of left with an empty sense of where we really, what have we accomplished? How far have we gotten in these efforts? So if I didn't sum that up for the committee correctly, please somebody take another whack at it. But I think that is my response to this. Thank you. It gives us a good basis, a bedrock for having an idea of some of the things, although I don't think we yet know all of the different things. Tola seems to be a very busy man, but I don't think we know firmly what all the different initiatives are, and I don't think we yet have any sense of what is happening with the efforts. So,
no, I think what you said is fine.
Yeah. Alderwoman Finlayson, and
I agree.
All right. So I guess we would look for some kind of additional response to these kinds of things, and it carries all across. Brian Callahan is doing a lot of things, but again, I mean, he's doing a ton of things in a lot of different venues. But in fact, I'm looking at one right now, Cars Beach, on the second to last page or third to last page, which really sparks my interest, particularly since we see Peerless Wren in for some grants money. And I've always paired those two as a part of our history, a strong part, and particularly here in Eastport, and especially of Alderwoman Finlayson's, but I think of the Annapolis community, some things that we really want to make sure we keep. And there are some things going on with the mayor that you know about, Ms. Smith, and I only recently found out through some outside sources, but also Alderman Savage, about Bimby Beach and where that may go in a different direction, but that's right next to cars. And it could be something that could be a really exciting venue to commemorate music from my past life and many of our past lives. So there's just oodles of things that are touched on briefly, but don't give us the full mouthful of all the things that are going on. So that's across the whole of the mayor's office. At this point, though, we are
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, Alderman Gay. Yes,
Thank
please.
you. I had quick questions. Susie, could you explain to me what you're expecting from the role of arts coordinator in the mayor's budget?
Arts coordinator, which Brian does, is principally liaison to AIPPC, but he's also been involved with trying to put together the pieces for some of the murals that aren't necessarily only AIPPC. So it is a, and then there's Umbrella Sky, which is a incredible installation, if we're ever able to do it, which is, you may have seen pictures of it. It's your whole sky is different umbrellas as though they're hanging there. And it has been a big attraction for tourism for other cities that have done that installation. And we've looked at doing that on Maryland Avenue. That has been going on now for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, trying to figure out if we can do it. And it's just wonderful if it's possible. First,
is that not something that could be done? And again, this is me trying to get a better understanding of arts in public places. We had this discussion a little bit last night. Mm-hmm. Is that not something that could be pitched in a potential project to them, that they could use the $63,000 that they are getting from the hotel tax, the 3%, that they could take on a project like that?
Actually, we have worked with the businesses over on Maryland Avenue for a funding source there. And so obviously AIPPC would be involved in it because they're involved in any art installation that's outside in the city. But we had just a, first of all, of course, we had the COVID year, so that puts that aside. And then there was a question of working through the fire department because the wires that cross over the buildings on Maryland Avenue. So it's a complicated, multi-year, it's a spectacular installation. Gavin's got a picture of it in his office if you're ever in his office, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I've seen what it looks like. To me, that's hiring a project manager to oversee an art project. And it's like, I don't know if that's I'm not the mayor, so I shouldn't say it's my highest priority. I don't know if that's his or not. You also mentioned that you were missing a role earlier. You said PIO, or you referred to when they asked about the African-American liaison?
We're missing Will at this moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Republican.
Irreplaceable. Right. So back to the arts coordinator, I'd like to discuss that further. This is a small amount of money, but significant enough that they'd be managing an art project. And so that's a concern. And then just on some of the points you made earlier, I think the most important comment that you've made today was at the start of the presentation when you said, we do different things and there are different services. Police look at community policing still through the lens of policing. We're looking at it through the lens of social services, healthcare, and a number of other lenses. And so I guess that'd be a question for the full finance. I won't get into that, but I just think that point was so important because we can't force police into some of these different avenues like healthcare, et cetera, and get taken on other roles and stuff because it's not their job. As you mentioned, their job is to be police. They're looking at it through the lens of the police. Any other social services that we should provide should be completely separate from that. But I appreciate this presentation. I have minimal amendments, if any, outside of the one that I just mentioned to you. I think you guys have done good work. To the points that they've made, though, I need some sort of data. I don't know how maybe that's where the project manager needs to be hired. Someone, a data analysis, somebody that can, look at what the projects the mayor's doing and putting them into or transferring over the data so we can see who's getting help, where, which wards are getting the most help, what people like race, just all of those things. That data should be compiled and taken so that we can, at the end of the day, say, look, we know for sure we help this amount of people in this situation. I say the same thing with the 150% group and the police's, I forget what they call it, their recidivism program. The more data we have, the better, because that puts our minds to ease. We don't want to be worried. I just want to vote yes for $180,000 to fund these programs without a question. I don't even want to have to look into the data, but it will be helpful as we are in the inception of some of these programs, because otherwise we don't know if we're wasting money or not. But thank you. Very good presentation.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, I have a follow-up question about the murals. The murals that are popping up all over the city are absolutely phenomenal. Who's paying for them? Who's coordinating them? Who's planning them? Is there someone or some entity that's responsible for the murals? How are they coming about?
I think each one comes about in a different way, but they're really coming, the kind of inspiration is coming from people or groups in the city. Most of them require some money from AIPPC. They endorse it and they contribute a few $1,000s. These murals can cost sort of in the range of around $17,000 by the time you pay for the paint and the artists. And each one of them, more or less, has been a learning session for kids or for other people who want to learn, who want to be involved with art, that they participate in what is a project that they can kind of color in the squares, I guess. So each one of them, if you've got an idea and you've got a wall, you got to talk with us about it or talk to anybody. I mean, we've kind of picked up the responsibility for this because there's no other real central way but the administration is involved in helping getting these put together.
So is there a line item in your, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, and I think they're great too. I know there's no line item.
So how are we paying for them?
We don't pay for them all. We don't pay for very much. Occasionally we pay, but we don't, mostly it's not city money. There is some city money in it. I don't want to leave that impression. But you have to go mural by mural, and I don't have that. But
So are community organizations paying for them? Somebody's paying for them. I'm just trying to figure out who.
Individuals, community organizations, HOAs, as I say, AIPPC, sometimes there's some donation of the art, but we don't want to try to do it that way. We want the artists to be reimbursed where we obviously can. And we have some exceptional artwork now in murals on walls in our city. It's really quite phenomenal.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I went on a tour with a couple of friends about a week ago to check out the murals because I didn't know where the mural with the justices was located. But I couldn't even say where that came from. It just appeared on South Street. I mean, who's the artist? I think we need if it's AAIPP, they used to put out a booklet.
That's future history now.
It's okay. So they still do, or somebody does that, but there should be some document that tourists and residents can go to say where the mural is, who did it, what's the subject, and that kind of thing. So
if we had the staff, I would put that together in a minute. We should have on our website a tour of our outdoor murals or outdoor art or whatever. Great, but we need somebody to do it, and we don't have the ability, but I think it would be great.
well, maybe Arts in Public Places will take that on with their new funding. Thank you.
Alderwoman Tierney?
It's funny how things go full circle. In the code, I'll read it to you. The director of the Department of Recreation and Parks, remember you asked why AIPPC is under Parks and Recs. The director of the Department of Parks and Recs shall maintain a detailed record of all art in public places, including the drawings, designs, names of artists, and the director shall attempt to give appropriate recognition to the artists and publicity and promotion regarding art in public places. So I guess the director can because AIPPC comes under him, hi Dad, maybe they can delegate that to AIPPC, which I think that pamphlet was in the back, it said Department of Parks and Recs, but I totally agree there should be some kind of gatekeeper, because I know the public questions come up and they want to know why, how, where, who. So that's something maybe AIPPC can do with the additional funding that they've got.
Well, I think there should be a global plan too. Are we just doing murals anywhere that somebody happens to want them to pop up? Didn't we have a fairly celebrated case about a mural that showed up on a Saturday in Inner West Street? That is there no approval process for putting murals up or a review process? Are we just murals at will now? I kind of would like to have a little more control.
You're right about that famous mural. I believe that AIPPC is the gatekeeper in that regard. They all have to be approved by no matter whether they fund them or not, they have to approve it.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there's Dr. Nash.
Yeah.
Dr. Nash to the rescue.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that all murals in the historic district have to go to the HPC for approval.
Right. But what about the rest of the city, Dr. Nash? I mean, if I want to put one on the front of my house, fire away?
We don't regulate that.
Okay. That strikes me as something that could lead to cacophony, but maybe not. I don't know. It just guess it goes against my regulator's spirit. Committee. We have once again entered into, I think, areas that are appropriate for the city council, but maybe not necessarily appropriate to bringing to closure the city budget for fiscal 22. And we are now getting close to 1 o'clock. We have not taken up fees and fines. I would like to get a sense of the community if there are a number of questions on fees and fines, if there are concerns. We do have Dr. Nash here, who I think is one of the people. We had Mr. Trader, because there are a bunch of fees for Parks and Recs. There's liquor fees, those sorts of things. Alderman Payon is about to respond to my implied question.
Mr. Chair, I have a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock. I've got to go momentarily.
Dr. Nash.
I can be very brief, and I am not available tomorrow morning.
Okay. Dr. Finlayson, what is your thinking?
Well, I was going to suggest that since for tomorrow we only had community grants and classifications, that we put them off until tomorrow. But I'd rather, if we can take up whatever Dr. Nash can speak to, whether it's fees or fines, then if we can do that while she's here.
Well, I
I
think
don't know.
we need to get, I think Alderman Payon just put down a marker that he is about to part eminently, and I'd like him to be part of this, but I'm now starting to feel some anxiousness about the committee getting all the information and votes under its belt and still being able to produce a report for the council on Monday evening.
Well, may I ask Dr. Nash, are there some specific changes to either fees or fines that you could speak to rather quickly?
I can. So for fines, the only thing we did was increase the fine in historic district to be the same as other zoning violations. And for fees, our changes were mostly due to changes in the code that hadn't been echoed in the fee schedule itself. So they're mostly just rearranging things to make sure they're in the right sections. Also, we did increase some of our project fees that have public hearings, like special exceptions, plan developments, and major site design, because we used to have the applicant pay for the ad in the newspaper, but now we are going to just publish the agenda all at once and pay for it all together. And then, but to make up for that extra expense, we had to raise application fees. So it's ultimately they'll be paying the same amount. It's just that they'll be paying it all to us and not to part to us and part to the newspaper.
Dr. Nash, and you were brief and I appreciate that. Is there a chance you could put those items in writing to us so that we can refer to them tomorrow when we take these up again?
Certainly, it is in what I submitted with my budget, and I will just forward that page.
Okay. I would be satisfied with that, Mr. Chair.
I think I would be too, and I think Alderman Payon has already had to leave us. Was there a change for the fee for filing an appeal? I thought I heard that, but I didn't see it.
Oh, it would only have been for the increase in notification.
Okay. All right. So I did review all of these along with you, Alderwoman Finlayson, and I really had no questions about either fees or fines. We'll look at the materials that Dr. Nash provided us, and hopefully tomorrow we can dispatch with that quickly. I'm not so sure we'll dispatch with community grants as quickly because we never do, but we can defer that until tomorrow. Dr. Nash, thank you I hope you weren't lingering long with us. This was a long meeting and covered territory I'm not sure we all expected, but I think it was profitable at a policy level at least. So thank you for being here and reminding us of that material. That would be helpful.
Problem. Have a good day.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, you too.
I think at this point, Alderman Payon has left us. And I think at this point, my endurance is running short. I would at this point entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, I will make that motion, but before I do, I'd like to thank Mr. Lyles, Mr. Johnson. I saw Dr. Nash. They've joined us without having any thing to say, so thank you. But I will make the motion that we adjourn.
And thank you for that graciousness. And I didn't look at the list of people, so I also thank you for bearing with us. We're finding new ways and forging new paths, and I think it's a good thing, but it does get laborious, and we do tend to keep people on the line, and we apologize for that, but we do value your services. Last night, City Attorney Lyles, we were very appreciative of Attorney Berger being there, and she helped us out with a couple of things, so that was appreciated as well. I will second the motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.